So we did get a few questions, and some of these topics you and I have had conversations about in the past. But it's been a week exactly since the judge allowed the pre-Roe law to take effect. And you were very quiet those days. Well, people were running to get to microphones. You weren't. You kept quiet on it.
Yeah.
But a couple of our voters wanted to find out what you think should be the law of the land as it relates to abortion in Arizona.
We were all waiting for that ruling. We didn't know what was going to happen. The Supreme Court threw this decision-making process back to the states where it should be. And so we were all kind of on pins and needles. And I didn't come out because I've spoken this whole campaign since June of, over a year ago when I jumped in. I've been speaking about my stance, which is pro-life. I'm pro-woman, and I want to make sure that women have health care. I want to make sure that women have access to birth control, and I want to make sure that women are treated with respect. I didn't jump in front of the cameras. I think that's a real political move, and we noticed the left doing that, trying to politicize this, and I felt that that was the wrong thing to do. I've been speaking about it since I jumped into this race. It looks like we have two laws right now, and I think there's still some confusion. I want to hear from somebody in our state right now to lay it out. Is it this law or is it that? I'm hearing that there's still two different factions basically saying it's either the law that was pre-Roe or the new law that Governor Ducey signed into law, about a year and a half ago. So I'm still unclear of where it is. I mean, maybe you know.
Well, there's been a movement, and that law that Ducey signed was this session. So there's been a call to the governor for a special session to sort all of this out. He doesn't seem inclined to do that. So if you're elected and we're still in this what law is it mode, would you call a special session?
I would take a look at where the law is, and I think by then, hopefully by January of next year, we'll have this figured out. My stance is that I'm pro-life, and I want to save as many babies as possible. And you remember, you and I are old enough to remember this, Mark, when Roe v. Wade came about, and then in the years that followed, abortion was to be rare but safe, rare but legal. And it's become anything but that. 63 million babies, lives were taken. The majority of them were black babies, minority babies. And the majority of neighborhoods that are considered minority neighborhoods are where many of the Planned Parenthoods were. I want to help women. On that day when they're making a difficult decision, I want to give them options. I want them to know there is a way that you can have this baby, that you can be a mother. And we've failed. We've failed as a society if those options are not given to women, if they're only given one option. There are so many centers out there where women can get the prenatal health they need, they can get the health care they need, and many of them will choose to keep the baby, maybe find an adoptive family that would love to raise that baby. So I just want to make sure that our women have health care, have access to birth control, and have free birth control if need be, because that's the way to prevent abortion.
One last question on this and we'll move on. Polling suggests that only 10% of Arizonans approve of or support a total abortion ban. So again, if we're confronted with this issue of two laws and you're the governor.
Actually, I think polling shows 90% of Americans think there should be some restrictions on abortion. 90% of Americans. I don't think that being pro-life is a drastic stance. What I think is drastic and very controversial is what my opponent, Katie Hobbs, believes. She believes in abortion right up until birth and after. She actually voted down legislation that would have provided a baby with medical help if a baby were to survive abortion. She said no to that. So a baby survives an abortion. Katie Hobbs doesn't want to see that baby getting any medical help, choosing and opting to have that baby die on a cold metal tray. And what I don't ever see, Mark, is the media pressing her for her exact stance on this. I am for women's health. I am for helping women. I am for helping babies. She is for the most extreme abortion stance we've ever seen in this country. Abortion right up until birth and after. And she's actually voted for infanticide. And I never see the media asking her about that. Have you been able to pin her down specifically on this.
Me personally, I'm not covering her. I'm covering
She's not
you.
talking. She's not talking. She's hiding. I make myself very accessible, and I'm telling you, I'm not going to answer a hypothetical. I don't know where this is going to be. Talk to me when it gets sorted out, and I'll be happy to tell you where I stand on it. I stand on saving as many babies' lives as possible and helping women. I'm from a family of 9, 8 girls, 1 boy. To even suggest I don't care about women's health is outrageous. And Hobbs is trying to politicize this because she knows her record is dismal. Her voting record was terrible in the legislature. She's been an incompetent Secretary of State. The only thing she can run on is trying to politicize something so difficult and so hard for a woman. And that's what she's doing here. And I wish the media would understand that.
Okay.
And actually reach out to her and say, we want to pin you down on where you stand. And when the voters hear where she stands, I think they'll be horrified. Imagine letting a baby who survives an abortion die on a cold metal tray.
All right.
It's the stuff of nightmares.
We'll leave that for now. I'd like to talk to you about the economy and inflation.
That's an important issue.
Yes. Is there something a governor can do to curb inflation in your state?
Well, short of convincing Joe Biden to stop printing money, it's going to be difficult. But we can do a few things. You know, this is where a president really matters, and a president who understands the economy and how things work. And we don't have that right now in the White House. We want to do everything we can to make sure that Arizonans are keeping their hard-earned money. And the things that are affecting people right now are the ability to pay for groceries, the ability to pay for their rent. So I want to work with the lawmakers, the legislature, to get rid of the food tax. We need to save pennies and dollars everywhere we can. And also I want to get rid of the rent tax. I mean, we need a shelter over our heads, and we shouldn't have to pay taxes on renting an apartment or a home to house our families.
An economist told Garrett Archer, one of our reporters, this week, he said that what we're seeing in Arizona is the dark side of prosperity.
Yes, indeed. That's why we're seeing.
And what that we meant by that is that people are coming in and charging whatever they want because they can get away with it. Profiteering.
I don't think that. I think what it is supply and demand. You're talking about the housing. And our success in Arizona has actually caused our housing prices to go up. We have a lot of people wanting to move here. We're an attractive state. We're a free state. And the blue states are driving people away with dead-end policy that's destructive for people. And so people are moving here in droves. As they move here, there is a demand for housing. And if you have one apartment for rent and you've got 5 people who want to rent it, the price goes up. That's supply and demand. And so that's why our housing prices are rising so fast. A lot of it is because there's so many people moving here. And what we need to do is make sure that we push our neighbors in states that are blue states and Democrat states, we push the people there to vote Republican so you don't have to flee your state. When we have everybody fleeing their state from all these blue states, we end up having a supply and demand issue with housing.
So you don't.
Housing prices have shot up.
So housing aside, and I'll get to that. We'll talk about your plan for homelessness and in just a minute here. But they're talking about more than just that, Kari. They're talking about big
price
oil.
Gouging?
Yes, gouging and profiteering, and because they can get away with it. I'm just wondering, when you go out to rural places, places that are getting hit hard, it's everywhere actually, but are they coming to you and asking you what can you do about it, and what do you tell them when it's more than just your food, it's everything that you pay for.
Housing prices have gone up. It's really in the housing, and we have so many people coming here to this state, we don't have enough housing for everyone. And it doesn't help that we have hundreds of thousands of people pouring across our southern border. Have you ever asked yourself where they're living? They're not living on the streets, Mark. The government is buying up and paying for housing for people. It's the Americans, it's the Arizonans who are living on the streets, and that's where we have to make sure we stop the illegal activity at the border And obviously we can't stop Californians from moving in, and we can't stop people from Illinois from moving in. You know, Americans can move about this country wherever they want to go. We need to build more housing. We're going to work. We do have a housing emergency, and we're going to work to cut some of the red tape, make sure that we can get the permitting done faster. If you're a home builder and you're waiting for a year to find out if you can get the permitting to build the homes, that extends our housing situation, our housing shortage situation. So our plan is to push these cities to make sure that they're giving a yes or no answer. We're not asking them to change up their zoning and all of that. All we are doing is asking them to speed it up. Time is money. We have home builders trying to get shovels in the ground. We have people who need housing, and we're going to cut some of this red tape. You ask a home builder and they say, it takes forever. We're going through the permitting process forever. We need cities and municipalities to speed that up because we do need housing. The way around this problem, build more housing, make sure we can get people in it, and that will bring the prices down as well.
Okay. You just brought up the border, which is another question that viewers have. And I'm going to kind of distill what they want to know. You talk about an invasion. Everywhere I've seen you go out, you refer to what's happening in the border as an invasion. And as governor, the first thing you'll do is move the National Guard down there and take control of the border. Tell me if I'm wrong here, where the feds have failed.
Yeah.
Explain to those folks what you mean by sending the National Guard to the border and taking control. What would their mission be?
I will issue a declaration of invasion on day one, hour one. First thing we're going to do. And we're going to send National Guard, we're going to send other resources, state resources, down to key areas along the border where people are coming in. We're going to stop people from coming in. I've been down to the border too many times to count, and I've seen anywhere from groups of 5 and 10 pouring across all day to 100 people pouring into this country. We can't handle this anymore, and we won't handle it anymore. We're not going to take on the world's problems. Unfortunately, the Border Patrol is forced to continue to take people in and process them. They can't stop them. We're going to stop them and not let them in. That's how we're going to start. And then we're going to work to make sure that we are checking for the cartels that are coming in. We're going to make sure we're preventing the drugs from coming in, and we're going to use every resource that we have access to do that. We have more fentanyl pouring in this country than we've ever seen before. It's the most dangerous, deadly drug that we've ever experienced. It's pouring in through Arizona. Arizona is becoming known as the fentanyl pipeline that is fueling an epidemic across this country. We're losing our young population to fentanyl poisoning.
Okay.
We're losing a generation, Mark. I've got parents who come up to me and say, I lost my 19-year-old son. My 22-year-old son took a pill and is gone. My 17-year-old son. We can't allow this to continue happening. And this is the cartels and the CCP working in conjunction to destroy this country and destroy our young people. And I'll tell you what, it's showing up in our junior highs and elementary school. They're now making these pills to look like candy. This is an epidemic. We've lost more than 4,000 Arizonans in the last couple of years to fentanyl poisoning. That's more than we lost in 9/11. And we went to war for 20 years over 9/11. And we're not doing a darn thing with fentanyl. And that's going to stop in January of 23. Well, we're going to take it to the cartels and tell them, get the hell out, go take your business somewhere else.
Let me ask you about something that was said this week by retired 3-star General Mike Flynn.
Okay.
He was attending an event, and I have it here to show you if you wanted to see it, for Mark Fincham. And he was during his remarks, and he says, states' rights. You know, a governor can declare war. That's right, a governor can declare war, okay? And we're probably going to see that. We're probably going to see that soon. Is he talking about you?
Article 1, Section 10 is also known as basically what Mike is talking about. You can call it whatever you want. We're declaring an invasion and we're protecting our border. That's what we're going to do. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it Article 1, Section 10, provisions in the U.S. Constitution. You can call it state war powers. It's often called state war powers. It's where the state takes their governor, takes their board or their guard, puts them on the border and protects the citizens. We've got to protect the citizens of Arizona, Mark.
Okay.
Crime is spiking. We've got cartels hiring our teenagers to come down to the border. Ask Cochise County what's going on. Ask Sheriff Daniels. They've got people coming from Phoenix. Imagine your son, 19 or 20 or 15, driving down to Cochise County, loading up a car, and they provide the cars, they provide the gas, loading up a car with 6 or 7 people here illegally and driving them to Phoenix. They're luring them into this illegal activity, and they're at risk. They're at great risk. And so we're going to protect our border. I don't care what you call it.
Well, I didn't call it.
Yeah.
This was the general who said it. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
It's also called that. I have heard it referred to that way. Basically, it's right there in the U.S. Constitution. It is our Article 1, Section 10 rights under the U.S. Constitution to protect our state when the government has failed. And unfortunately, Joe Biden came in on day one and pulled back a policy that was working beautifully to protect our state. You've been covering Arizona for a long time, as I did, 27 years for me. I'd never seen that border more secure than under President Donald J. Trump. On day one, Joe Biden came in and pulled that back. Have you ever asked why? Why do you think he did that?
Okay.
It's a good question, and it should be asked. Why did Joe Biden pull back the security we had on our border? If he's doing that, he cares more about the cartels than he cares about the people of this great country. And it's not just border states that they care about this. We get letters every day. I've got someone out there sorting through letters from all over this country. Kari, you're our only hope. Please protect our border. Please stop the drugs from coming in. Please stop this invasion. The whole country's watching Arizona right now. They don't like what they're seeing on the border. And Joe Biden is part and parcel to all of this.
We have a $17 billion trade deal with Mexico that we have. Do you worry or think that how they would look at an escalation from Arizona militarily regarding the border? Have you talked to anybody from Mexico?
It's not an
about
escalation. It's basically saying we're not going to let people cross the border. When President Trump was in office, the Mexican government was actually helping stop people. But now that Joe Biden, rolled out the welcome mat, they don't feel that they have to help, and we're going to ask them to help us. We're just going to ask them to do what they were doing under President Trump, which is keeping people from pouring across the border. They can put their Mexican Marines down on the border and stop this, and they can help us. And I think they will. I really do. I believe they will. I don't think they want this going on either.
Let's go back to affordable housing and then as well get into the addiction problem that you also reference in your platform. Mm-hmm. I did a story this week with a lady, 50 years old, blind, and a stroke victim. And she got evicted. And the reason why she got evicted had nothing to do with the fact she couldn't pay the rent. It's just that the landlord was going to sell the house. Mm-hmm. And so I watched that painful day of the constable being there and some people helping her pack and all of that. And she's now in a hotel until they can find more permanent housing. Mm-hmm. That's one story, one life in Arizona. Yeah. But you drive down to the Capitol, and you'll see that when you're elected, if you go that way, you will see
this week.
You will see families in cars, that for whatever reason got booted because the rent went up and they couldn't pay it and they had to go. How do we solve that problem? There's a lot of reasons that problem is happening, but how do we help these people sooner rather than later?
A lot of issues there. We're talking about affordable housing, and I talk to home builders all the time. They say, we've taken plans to some of these cities for affordable housing. Lay it out, and we say, we can build this for you and get a whole bunch of affordable housing. And some of the cities will come back and say, well, we don't like that plan because you didn't make a back patio with an overhang. And the home builder's saying, look, we want to help make affordable housing. For us to make it affordable, that we can be part of it, we're going to have to kind of come together on this. Do we really need a back patio and a fancy backyard, or do we need housing? And this is where we have to get some of these cities and municipalities to help out and say, you know what, we do prioritize affordable housing and we want to get this built. Let's work together with the builders to make it happen. There are resources for families that are homeless. And if the situation is mom and dad has a drug addiction, it's going to be really hard. That's where we have to work and put resources into drug addiction treatment. And we plan to do that. There's varying categories of homelessness. It's temporary homelessness where you kind of are between apartments trying to find something else. And then you've got the chronic street homelessness. And that's my policy that I think you're referring to.
Right.
These are people who are severely drug addicted. Many of them have mental health issues, but majority are heavily on drugs. They're addicts and they're living on the street. And we're going to work to bring that scourge to an end and help those people. I don't believe for one second that God envisioned any one of us living on the street with a needle in our arm, living in the depths of despair of addiction. Unfortunately, the homeless industry has been created around homelessness. And whenever there's an industry created around homelessness or any issue we need to fix, a lot of times so much money is pouring in that not everyone's interested in fixing it, sadly. It's hard for us to imagine, but that's the truth. So we're not going to pour any more state resources into any program that isn't showing results. And we're going to work to get people help. People who are living in tents, we're going to work to get help, build shelter beds to get them off the streets, give them access and encourage them with tough love to get into treatment, to get off the drugs, clear their minds from the drug-induced psychosis, get them job training, and help them become citizens who are contributing to society. It sounds impossible. It is not. It's happening every single day in certain types of homeless shelters around the country. For example, the Opportunity Center in Tucson. And you know why it's working there, Mark? Because they don't take federal dollars. Because when you take federal dollars, the federal government wants you to put housing first, not services first. Guess what happens when you take a drug addict and you give them housing first and you don't put any requirements on them getting treatment? Guess what happens? I think you can imagine. Give them a house, give them an apartment, they don't have to get treatment, that turns into a drug den. And a lot of times if they have children, it's a really sad, horrible situation. We've got to get these people into drug treatment, whether it's they choose to do it or we pressure them into do it, and we're going to start doing that. We're going to get them off the streets. We're not going to let our streets become tent cities. We're not going to let our streets become what we see in San Francisco, in Seattle, and in Portland. We will not allow Arizona to become a collection of cities that nobody wants to live in. And it's getting that way in certain parts of Phoenix and other towns across this state. So we're going to get people help, and if they won't get it, life's not going to be real fun. If they're choosing to live on the streets, live that lifestyle, cause troubles. We want to get people help, but we want to also start having compassion for the hardworking, tax-paying citizens of Arizona. They want their streets back. They want to be able to take their children to a park without having to be accosted by somebody on drugs, stepping on used needles, the risks that go with this. We can't bring crime down if we don't address this problem, and we're going to address it. One more question.
Okay. One more, that's all?
I think so. We have another interview with another reporter.
Can you give me 5 minutes? Because I want to ask you about water and then just a couple.
How about we cut it in the middle and give you 3 minutes?
All right.
Okay, I'll try to answer quickly. How's that, Mark?
Okay. Voters want to know about water. You know, we're starting to see the formation of this group that the legislature passed that's supposed to be looking for water, coming up with new technologies, that sort of thing. Last time we talked, you know, you were still forming an opinion, I think, really, in fairness to you, because it was just bubbling up as an issue.
It's been an issue for a long. It was one of the first issues I put on my website.
So where are you on this? What do you think we need?
It's a very pressing issue, and I've talked relentlessly about this nonstop on the campaign trail. We can't conserve our way out of a drought. I sure wish we could, but we can't. And the ag community gets the short end of the stick when we do that. Half of the fields in Pinal County are fallow. The farmers aren't planting anything there. So we got to look at bringing water resources in. We talked about desalination last time I talked to you, and they have a desal plant in Southern California near San Diego. It's working brilliantly. If California had some real leadership, they would have desal up and down that coast, but they don't. They're irresponsible. Their leaders are not working for the people. We need to look at doing desal, whether it comes from doing desal plants in Arizona and taking that brackish water, brackish groundwater, cleaning it up and using it. That's one option. You know, we could work with Mexico. That's another option. Maybe build a desal plant there and then have them trade out their Colorado River. That's a very complicated fix. I think we should explore drilling down in Yuma County and going down and accessing. Many people who understand water and understand this type of thing believe that we can access water that would actually come from the Sea of Cortez by drilling down and looking at desalinating that water. What I want to tell you is we're going to look at everything. Every option is on the table because Arizona is growing. We need more water. And once we get our water fixed into the long, distant future, we get it all fixed, we're going to be the greatest state in the country. We can even look at piping in water. That is not a pie in the sky idea. We pipe oil all over. And I've seen some of the people who are trying to poo-poo that idea and saying, oh, it's going to cost this much or that. Those are people who don't want that to happen. We can do it. I'm going to work with the federal delegation, whether they be Democrat or Republican. We'll probably have a mix of both, the senators and congressmen and women. And we're going to come to some serious discussions on this, and we're going to make it happen. Because we will not kick this can down the road. Our children are counting on us, our grandchildren are counting on us, and our great-great-grandchildren. We got to start to do big things, Mark. Where are those men that came before us? The ones who built the Hoover Dam, the ones who brought us the Palo Verde nuclear power plant. Where are they? We got to stop thinking small, who's going to build the sports stadium and get the taxpayers to pay for it, and start solving these big problems. And I'm happy to spearhead that and work with people.
So, you have prided yourself as being somebody who is out of government.
Yep.
Who's going to work with you? When you get elected, who are the people you're going to surround yourself with? Who's going to be on your transition team to get you prepared to be the governor for the state of Arizona?
I've got great people surrounding me right now. We're bringing in people who love this state. Many people are fourth and fifth generation Arizonans. We're bringing in people from all walks of life, people who've been successful in their own business, who now want to give back and make sure that the state's running properly. I'm not going to name names right now because I know how the media works. They'll dox them and then they'll...
Give me an idea of what you're looking for.
I'm looking for people who will put Arizona and the people of Arizona first. That's what I'm looking for. And I want to bring people in who've been left out of government. For so long we've had this one kind of group of people working in the government, and if you weren't part of that inner circle, you didn't get to come in at all. We've got great people with great ideas that should be able to come in. I want to make sure when we're giving contracts, we're not just using the same old, same old. Let's open it up to everyone. And that's how government should be run. Ronald Reagan is my idol. And the way he ran California and helped turn that state around is what I want to do. I'm not an expert in every field. I'll be the first to admit that. One skill I do have that I think is important, and you have it as well. When you're a journalist, every day is a different day. You go in and you wrap your arms around the biggest issue the state's facing every day, Mark. And what do? You look, you dig around, you find the experts, and that's who you go to. That's how we're going to run the state.
Last question, and it can be a one-word answer. Will you accept the results on election night?
We're going to win on election night, and we will accept that result. Yes, thank you.